Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever walked away from someone only to wonder if they've really let you go? If you find yourself thinking, does he still care? You're not alone. Emotional attachment doesn't always end when the relationship does. Sometimes, even after the goodbye, the heart still lingers. The truth is, when someone is emotionally attached to you, it shows subtly or loudly. It's in what they say, what they don't say, and what they do when no one's watching. Maybe he keeps checking up on you or brings up memories only you two would understand. Maybe he hasn't moved on, even though he says he has. These aren't just habits, they're signs. Signs that emotionally, he's still holding on to the idea of you. Just because a relationship ends doesn't mean all the emotions connected to it vanish overnight. In fact, emotional attachment often lingers well beyond the final conversation, the returned belongings, or the changed relationship status on social media. That's because emotional bonds, especially those built over time, run deeper than just shared routines or romantic gestures. They're rooted in shared experiences, trust, vulnerability, and intimacy, things that don't simply fade when the relationship does. When someone is emotionally attached, their feelings remain tethered to you in ways that can be subtle or obvious. He might go about his day, see a place you both loved, hear a song that reminds him of you, or come across an old message that instantly pulls him back into the emotional space you once shared. These moments create emotional echoes that are hard to silence, especially if he hasn't truly healed or found closure. In some cases, people suppress their emotions after a breakup, pretending they've moved on. But buried emotions have a way of resurfacing through unexpected texts, random check-ins, or emotional reactions when they hear you've met someone new. Emotional attachment often shows up in these in-between spaces in the moments when he should be letting go, but instead keeps finding excuses to reconnect or stay in your orbit. Even if there's no romantic interaction anymore, if he's still emotionally invested, he may struggle to genuinely detach. He might still care deeply about your well-being, think about what you're doing, or quietly hold onto the hope that there's still a chance, no matter how small. This lingering emotional connection can be confusing, both for him and for you. But recognizing that emotional attachment doesn't end just because the relationship does is the first step in understanding his behavior and perhaps your own. When someone is still emotionally attached to you, one of the clearest signs is their inability to fully disconnect from communication. Even after a breakup, when all logical reasons to stay in regular contact have faded, if he's still reaching out, frequently, consistently, and sometimes without a clear reason, it often means there's something deeper going on emotionally. You might notice that he still texts you just to check in or reaches out under the guise of needing your opinion or help with something minor. He might send a message about a song that reminded him of you, a funny meme you would both laugh at, or a random thought that popped into his head. These aren't random acts. They're small emotional breadcrumbs. They're ways of keeping the line of connection open without directly saying, "I miss you." Even if the messages seem casual, the underlying pattern matters. Someone who's truly moved on doesn't feel compelled to keep that thread of conversation going. But someone who is still emotionally attached will often use any excuse, no matter how small, to hear from you, to keep you thinking about them, and to remain a presence in your daily life. This communication can also show up in subtle patterns, responding instantly to your messages, continuing conversations longer than necessary, or initiating contact at emotionally vulnerable times like late at night or on holidays when memories tend to surface. He may even test the waters emotionally, bringing up inside jokes or shared memories just to see how you react, to feel out whether you're still emotionally connected too. Sometimes the communication isn't just about what he says, but how he says it. You might sense warmth in his tone, a familiar comfort in the way he writes, or a certain care in how he phrases things. These emotional undertones can speak louder than the words themselves. Ultimately, when communication persists long after it should have faded, it's usually not about logistics or politeness. It's about holding on. It's about not being ready to let go completely. It's about staying tethered, even through the smallest conversations. When someone is still emotionally attached to you, one of the most telling signs is how often they refer back to the past. The memories, the moments, the inside jokes only the two of you shared. These aren't just random recollections. They're emotional touch points. Bringing them up is often a subconscious, or even conscious, attempt to reconnect with the feelings that came with those memories, and by extension, to reconnect with you. You might hear him say things like, "Remember when we went there?" Or, "That song we used to sing came on today." These moments aren't coincidences. They're emotional cues, and they usually come from a place of longing or nostalgia. When he mentions them, he's not just reminiscing, he's reliving. And often, he's hoping you'll join him in that moment. He's testing the waters to see if those memories still mean something to you too. Sometimes, these memories are light-hearted and fun, like laughing about a silly road trip mishap or a late night snack run. Other times, they're more sentimental, like remembering your first real conversation or a vulnerable moment you shared. Either way, when he brings them up, he's anchoring himself to those pieces of the past because they still hold emotional weight for him. It's important to notice the frequency and timing of these memory references. If he often circles back to the same events or moments, especially during quiet or emotional times, like late nights, anniversaries, or after hearing certain songs, it's likely because those memories are still very present for him. And if he speaks about those times with warmth, sadness, or what ifs, that's even more telling. Sometimes people bring up the past to keep it alive, especially when they're not ready to let go of what it meant to them. In this case, the memories become a bridge, a way of reaching across the emotional distance that now exists between you. It's not always about rekindling the relationship directly, but about holding on to a version of it that still feels safe, real, and meaningful in his mind. Bringing up shared memories is often his way of saying, "That still matters to me," without actually having to say it. It's a subtle, emotional way of revealing that even if life has moved forward, his heart hasn't moved on completely. One of the most telling signs that a man is still emotionally attached to you is his inability to fully move on romantically. If time has passed, and yet he hasn't committed to someone new, or worse, if he keeps comparing everyone he meets to you, it usually means there's still a part of his heart that hasn't let you go. Sometimes people don't jump into another relationship because they're healing, but other times it's because no one else measures up to what they had or what they think they had with you. If he goes on casual dates, but none of them last, or he's constantly finding flaws in the people he meets, it may not be because those women are lacking, but because he's still emotionally tethered to an idealized version of you. You've become the standard in his mind, and whether consciously or not, he's comparing every new connection against what he once shared with you. He might say things like, "She doesn't get my sense of humor like you did," or "You used to always know how to calm me down. No one else gets me like that." These comments can seem innocent on the surface, but they're deeply rooted in emotional memory. They reflect a yearning for familiarity, for emotional safety, and for the unique connection he still associates with you. Even if he does get into a relationship, if he brings you up often, references your qualities, or still talks about your time together, it's a sign that part of him is emotionally unavailable to the new person. He may even unintentionally sabotage new relationships because his heart hasn't made space for someone else yet. Emotional attachment can create blind spots. It keeps him looking backward even as life tries to pull him forward. In some cases, he may openly admit that no one compares to you. In others, he won't say it directly, but his actions will reveal it. Maybe he avoids serious conversations with new people, doesn't put in much effort, or disappears emotionally when things start getting deeper. That hesitancy often comes from still being emotionally caught up in what was. This behavior can also be confusing for him. He may not fully understand why he feels so disconnected from new potential partners, or why he keeps finding himself mentally revisiting a relationship that ended. But it's often because there are still unresolved feelings, unanswered questions, or unexpressed emotions that keep the emotional bond with you very much alive. Not dating seriously or constantly comparing others to you isn't just a sign that he hasn't found someone better. It's often a sign that he's not ready to, because in his mind, emotionally, he's still with you. Even if he's no longer actively a part of your daily life, a man who is still emotionally attached to you will often find ways to stay connected, quietly, subtly, and from a distance. One of the clearest indicators of lingering emotional attachment is how closely he keeps an eye on your life without directly involving himself in it. He may not reach out, but he's paying attention. He might not say anything, but he's noticing everything. This kind of distant observation can show up in many ways. Maybe he regularly views your Instagram stories or likes your posts, even the old ones. Maybe he doesn't comment or engage publicly, but you notice he's always among the first to see anything you share. He might not have said a word to you in weeks or months, but somehow he's still there, lurking in your digital space, quietly showing up without really showing up. Sometimes he might not even interact with your posts at all, but he'll ask mutual friends about you. He may casually slip your name into conversations or inquire about what you've been up to. It might sound like idle curiosity, but often it's more than that. It's a way to stay emotionally connected without having to directly confront those feelings or expose his own vulnerability. This behavior often comes from a place of emotional conflict. On one hand, he might know that he shouldn't reach out, that the relationship is over, that distance is necessary. On the other hand, his emotions haven't caught up with that reality. So instead of reestablishing full contact, he chooses to linger on the edges of your life, hoping to feel close to you without risking rejection or reopening wounds. Watching from afar can also be a form of emotional safety. It allows him to monitor how you're doing, who you're with, and how you're moving on, all without putting himself in a position to be hurt. If he sees you thriving, he might feel a mix of pride, sadness, and regret. If he sees you with someone new, it may trigger feelings he didn't expect, like jealousy or the realization that he's still emotionally invested. There's a kind of silent intimacy in this type of behavior, a quiet thread that connects him to your life, even when the relationship itself has ended. It's not just about curiosity. It's about emotional presence. It's about wanting to be close without knowing how to be or feeling like he no longer has the right to be. And yet, he can't fully look away. This pattern of staying on the sidelines, observing your life without being in it, isn't just a habit. It's an emotional signal. It's a sign that part of him is still caught in the connection, still wondering about you, still feeling tethered in ways he may not even fully understand. One of the most revealing signs that he's still emotionally attached is the way he responds, whether openly or silently, when he sees you moving on with your life, especially in love. Whether you're dating someone new, glowing in your independence, or simply showing signs of healing, his reaction can say a lot more than his words ever will. If he's truly detached, your growth and happiness wouldn't disturb him. He might feel nostalgic or a bit sentimental, but he wouldn't feel shaken. However, if he's still emotionally attached, your movement forward, especially romantically, can hit him like a wave. It might stir up feelings he's been trying to suppress or deny, and suddenly he finds himself dealing with emotions he thought he had under control. These reactions can come in many forms. Sometimes it's obvious. He may reach out after a long silence, suddenly becoming more present or attempting to reinsert himself into your life just when you start getting close to someone else. He might send a message out of nowhere like, "Hey, I was just thinking about you," or try to reignite conversation as if nothing happened. This timing isn't random. It often happens because seeing you with someone else threatens the emotional space he's been reserving for you, whether or not he admits it. In other cases, the reaction is more emotional than logical. He might act cold, distant, or even passive-aggressive when he finds out you've moved on. He may unfollow or block you, lash out indirectly, or behave in a way that contradicts his usual temperament. These reactions are often driven by jealousy, fear of replacement, or the painful realization that someone else might now be experiencing the emotional closeness he still craves. Even silence can speak volumes. If you notice he suddenly disappears after learning about your new relationship or becomes completely withdrawn, that absence often isn't indifference. It's emotional overwhelm. He may be avoiding the discomfort of watching you give what you once gave to him to someone else. That kind of emotional displacement can feel like a loss all over again, especially if he hasn't truly let go. Sometimes he'll try to downplay his reaction, act like it doesn't affect him, or pretend he's happy for you. But beneath the surface, he may be struggling with a cocktail of emotions: regret, sadness, jealousy, even resentment. He might begin to romanticize the past, question his decisions, or try to convince himself, and maybe even you, that what you had was different, deeper, or not easily replaceable. What this all points to is a disruption in his emotional state. Your movement forward is a mirror that reflects his emotional attachment back to him. It's no longer a quiet memory or an occasional thought. It becomes real again, and it often brings unresolved emotions to the surface. When a man is still emotionally attached to you, one of the most telling signs is his continued willingness, almost eagerness, to be there for you, even when you don't ask for it or clearly don't need it. This type of behavior goes beyond simple kindness or friendly courtesy. It reflects an underlying emotional need to stay connected, to remain relevant in your life, and to fulfill a role that once gave him purpose. You may notice he jumps at any opportunity to be useful to you. Maybe your car has a minor issue, and he volunteers to look at it. You casually mention you're feeling overwhelmed at work, and suddenly he's offering advice or checking in more often. Even if you're capable of handling things on your own, and he knows it, he still insists on showing up in ways that allow him to feel emotionally close, needed, or irreplaceable. This behavior isn't always conscious. Sometimes he doesn't even realize why he's doing it. On the surface, it may look like he's just being supportive, but deep down, there's often a quiet hope that being the one who helps will keep him emotionally tied to you. Helping you is his way of staying involved in your world. It gives him a reason to reach out, to connect, to keep you thinking of him in a positive light. There's also a sense of emotional familiarity in offering help. When you were together, he may have found comfort in being someone you leaned on. That role made him feel significant, trusted, and close to you. After the breakup, stepping into that role, even temporarily, can recreate a sense of that emotional bond. It lets him feel like he's still part of your life in a meaningful way. Sometimes, he might even create opportunities to offer support. He may ask you questions that seem like harmless conversation, but are really designed to uncover if there's something going wrong or if there's space for him to step in. If you mention that you're going through a hard time, he might suddenly reappear more present, more attentive, more eager to show he still cares. It's also worth noting that this kind of support often comes with an emotional undertone, a gentleness, a protectiveness, or even a sense of nostalgia. The way he checks on you, the way he offers to help, and the way he listens can feel deeply personal, almost as if he's still in relationship mode emotionally, even if the title is gone. At times, this dynamic can confuse both of you. You might wonder why he's still so involved, and he might convince himself he's just being nice, even though his actions stem from something deeper. Being there for you allows him to hold onto a thread of the emotional connection you once had, and often he's not ready to let that thread go. One of the deepest and most revealing signs that he's still emotionally attached is when he speaks about the relationship not as something that was, but as something that could have been. These conversations are rarely accidental. They're usually laced with emotional weight, subtle regret, and a quiet longing for an alternate reality where things between you turned out differently. He might not say it outright, but you'll hear it in the way he reminisces. Maybe he says things like, "If we had just gotten through that phase," or "I still think about what our life would have looked like if we hadn't drifted apart." These aren't just nostalgic thoughts. They're emotional markers of a heart that's still stuck somewhere in the past, still imagining a version of the future that included you. When someone is truly over a relationship, they tend to view it with more finality. The memories might still be meaningful, but they've accepted the chapter as closed. But when he continues to bring up mischances, lost timing, or talks as if the story between you never really ended, it's a strong indication that he hasn't emotionally let go. That what if space becomes a soft place for him to land when he's feeling lonely, uncertain, or full of unresolved emotions. These what could have been reflections can show up in a lot of different ways. Maybe he jokes about growing old with you, mentions how well your personalities still match, or wonders aloud what your life would look like if things had gone another way. Sometimes it's subtle, like referencing a future plan you once shared or talking about how you would have handled something better together. Other times, it's more direct. He might even admit that he thinks he messed up, or that he still imagines you as part of his future. This kind of talk reveals a heart that hasn't fully accepted the loss. Even if time has passed and the breakup felt mutual, there may still be a part of him clinging to hope, to the idea that maybe, somehow, the story isn't really over. In his mind, he's still holding on to the emotional framework of the relationship, the plans, the promises, the dreams you built together, even if life has taken you both in different directions. Talking about what could have been is often his way of expressing feelings that are too vulnerable to state plainly. Instead of saying, "I miss us," he says, "Imagine if we had figured things out." Instead of, "I still love you," it becomes, "We were really good together, weren't we?" These words might seem casual or hypothetical, but they carry the weight of everything left unsaid. So if you've noticed these signs, whether it's his presence in your inbox, his name in your notifications, or the way he still speaks your name with a softness he doesn't even realize, understand that emotional attachment doesn't always fade just because the relationship ended. Sometimes the body walks away, but the heart lingers. It's not always about getting back together. And it's not always your responsibility to carry his unresolved feelings. But knowing the signs can help you make sense of the mixed messages, the late night texts, the subtle looks, and the sudden disappearances. It gives you the clarity to either create distance or open a conversation, depending on where you stand. Because at the end of the day, the question isn't just, is he still emotionally attached? It's, what do you want to do about it now that you know? The past may still echo, but the future is yours to choose, clear-eyed, confident, and in control of your heart.